Hello and welcome to my podcast. I am super excited today. I always love to talk to amazing people. I have had the blessing of knowing my guest that I will be introducing or am introducing for almost 10 years now. What's more exciting about our journey is that we are embarking on a part of our shared journey to work together. And we have a passion for helping business leaders do a better job in their workplace. If you're already doing a great job, we love that. If you're really struggling, we truly can help. We have a lot of tools for that. But what I love right now in introducing Jean Hollowell to you is that our shared journey brings a lot more power to the table. And I've known Jean and she has known my work, and she used to say to me, I wish we could, find a way to work together. And there were some barriers in our past that prevented that, but it just means that this is the time. So I've known Jean. She's going to introduce herself a bit more, but I've known her for being an amazing leader of an international nonprofit, the ability to bring people together, the ability to clean up somewhat of a mess, I would say, that sometimes we walk into as leaders. Also, I came to find out, and I knew Jean was an attorney, but what I didn't know, which I thought was really quite serendipitous, was that Jean served small and medium-sized business as an attorney down in North Carolina, in the Carolinas. And sometimes you get to hear a little bit of her southernness, but she's actually truly a Philly girl, right? You're from PA, but Jean's going to tell you all about that. But anyway, I was like, wow, Jean, like you bring so much to the table. I feel like we could offer a lot together to really help and support small to medium sized businesses. So I said, why don't you come on my podcast and I'll introduce you and our shared journey to the world. So without further ado, I'm so happy to have Jean Hollowell here, and I'm going to pass it to her, and she's going to introduce herself to you.
Well, good morning, Sherry and everyone. It's so nice to be with you today. I've always admired Sherry's work. She is an amazing author and speaker, trainer, motivation, entrepreneur. And like she said, I had always hoped we could work together, but the timing wasn't right until now. I retired last summer from heading up a nonprofit that she mentioned, and I said, hey, let's get together. So prior to meeting Sherry, I was born into a family of educators. I grew up in a small town in central Pennsylvania where Penn State University is, and I thought my path would be to be an educator. And I tried that for a couple of years, and I always say I left teaching to do something easier, and that was to go to law school and to open a small, totally woman-owned and operated law firm in Eastern North Carolina. And I did litigation, a trial practice, courtroom for 20 years. And then I felt like I needed to try something different. And so I moved over out of the courtroom and focused my businesses on supporting small and mid-sized companies, and did that for the last 10 years. And it was a marvelous journey. It was filled with lots of challenges and opportunities and times and places to help people in their businesses. And then once again, there came a time when I was ready to leave that, and I had the opportunity to work for this international nonprofit and to become the executive director. And that gave me an opportunity to travel all over the country, meet people like Sherry Blair, and see the amazing things that are being done to help and support educators, some parents, and businesses. So happy to be with you, Sherry, and share this new journey that we're going on, this new adventure.
Thank you. Me too. I'm super excited about it. Jean, just to back up a little bit, Because I think our listeners, especially if they're small businesses or business leaders, and I say small business, obviously Jean has served bigger businesses as I have, but small and medium sized businesses often don't have all the resources that big businesses have. Like corporations have all the glitz and glamour, and they have departments for everything. They even have coaching departments. They have, one of the big things I love to help people with is change, because it's something I studied and I'm passionate about. Because you could want a lot of things, but if you don't understand the process of change, your initiatives won't be as successful as you really want to see them. And at the end of the day, it's about numbers and productivity. And behind that is about people. So, Jean, I'm wondering, what were some of the problems that you helped serve? Because I know that when we're in the business of serving just from different aspects. What were some of the problems that you saw businesses had that you were helping them with? And I think if you can add on to that, what did you see could have helped them avoid these risks? Because nobody wants to end up in a courtroom. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, that's true, Sherry. I think the only people that want to end up in a courtroom are the attorneys. And really the good ones try to mediate a settlement to avoid a courtroom. But I found that the small and mid-sized businesses almost inherently, they had the skill set for what they knew how to do, whether it was a trucking company or a window manufacturing company. They knew those skills and they were very good at them. But they didn't have the business head about how to be a leader, how to manage people, how to meet their bottom line and hopefully exceed it. And so as an attorney, I could provide, of course, the business part of it. But when you are an attorney, you're also a counselor. And so that gave me the opportunity to also capitalize on some of my skills, which was to help support them being effective leaders and effective managers. And that's the biggest thing I see that businesses need. They know what they want to provide for people, but the whole effective leadership is a part that a lot of people do not know. And that's where I know you have stepped in and helped businesses and companies, and that's what I would like to do as well.
Ah, okay. And that was again, you didn't mention the industry that, I was in with my first graduate degree, which I stepped into behavioral and mental health leadership. And I had this, wonderful degree. I knew how to help people at the individual level a great deal. But I felt that I needed to learn more about organizational psychology, human behavior in the workplace. I also, as an academic professor, about 10 years total, I've taught human behavior. So I get human behavior really well. But I did feel that was something I was missing as a leader. And then I took it up a notch, and I did a business consultancy certification. But then I felt still that wasn't enough, because I needed more of a focus on human behavior, because a lot of times there are people and problems. Now, interestingly, we're serving people with challenges and the problems that they're bringing to the table, but I still felt inadequate. So it's interesting, that, here we are on this shared journey, and you're saying you felt like that's what they were missing. And they often, are great business, like terms of getting the business off the ground, making some money, because that's a big thing. It's not easy to stay in business. But when you start, it also too, when you start getting bigger, Jean, I learned something from an amazing local business leader here in Montclair. And she said, hire slow and fire fast. But she meant was take time to get quality people into your organization. Because at one time, I almost had 50 employees, and that was a whirlwind. And even though we were bringing in, I was into the six figures, and I was very proud of those accomplishments, but things were so chaotic that at sometimes I didn't even realize how successful I was. It's years later that people said, wow, you got up to bringing in that much income. And I was like, yeah, but what another thing people don't know about being an entrepreneur is you could bring in a lot of money, but you're really not making money. And actually, a great example of that is in Philip Knight in Nike, the Nike guy. Sorry if I'm not saying his name right. But Shoe Dog, in his book Shoe Dog, he talked about that. Nobody would imagine that the Nike owner wasn't making money. But there were a lot of problems that we come across, and at the end of the day, it's people that drive business, right? So if we don't understand how to work with people and communicate with people, really using our powers to relate, those are things that if we don't take the time, we'll end up with problems and lawsuits too. Like I've seen that in serving some small businesses too, that everything looks great, and I come in and I'm seeing like, wow, I think they're going to have a problem. But sometimes the business leaders don't want to listen to consultants' advice. I remember working for a pretty big nonprofit. I was there as an interim manager, um, just to help them hire. I wasn't there as an employee. I was there as a contractor, and that's something that I'm able to do. I could step in and kind of help you while you're hiring, and help you to kind of put out some fires. But I saw that they were heading toward a major problem, and they actually went union. The employees went union because they were going against the leadership. And I actually, like, that's why I asked you, could you have helped them kind of avoid any of the problems? But even when you give that advice, sometimes it's on deaf ears. And sure enough, and I wasn't surprised, once they had everyone hired, even though they were bringing in some new leadership, it wasn't enough, and they did go union. Another example of a small business that I worked with too is, and I think it would be great to hear you talk about risk management. How do you reduce the risk by investing, what I love to say, in human capital? Because when you invest in your employees, the first person is you got to invest in is yourself. You've got to understand these principles. But when you invest in human capital by investing in your employees, you're going to have better outcomes. And one other example that I would love to hear you speak to is about risk management. This one small business that I did serve too would end up having people eventually become very disgruntled and then reporting back to the Department of Labor, which then created investigations by them, which she would then have to get a lawyer, right, to represent her, because there were some practices that might have been questionable. So I would love to hear you talk about maybe giving even advice, like how do you avoid risk by potentially investing in your organizational structure and people?
Well, I think you've raised a very good question, Sherry, because once again, it goes to the fact that someone knows the business or the product that they want to produce or the service that they want to provide, but they don't have all the skills to understand what it means to work with people and how to work with them effectively. Because what you really want are lifelong employees that are satisfied and work hard. I think many studies show that employees, yes, they want to be paid fairly and they want to be paid well, but they also want to be recognized and they want to feel some kind of ownership in the business. And when you have that collaboration between management and employees, that's the biggest way to avoid any, that's the biggest part of risk management, is listening to your employees and letting them know a part of it, because there are all kinds of ways that the business can go astray, from, harassment to some questionable practices. And because of the internet and the accessibility to knowledge these days, it's critical that leaders know what risks are out there and how to avoid them. And like you say, the first and biggest way is to invest in yourself and then to invest in your employees.
Thank you. I wonder if you could speak to, and if you've seen this, because one of the barriers, I would say a major barrier that I've seen, and this is, I would say, crosses gender. I can't say I've only seen it in men and not seen it in women and vice versa. And you and I both said it, investing in yourself first, because if you try to go at it, oh, let me teach you this thing, but you're really not applying it to yourself, it comes across as you're not authentic, and you're disingenuous. But the big word that I want to bring up right now is EGO, ego. What happens when you're dealing with a leader that their ego is, when somebody has a big ego, they have an unhealthy ego. You know, I could come at that from the psychological point of view, but what happens is, right, we could give them the tools or offer them the tools or the advice, or you said the good counsel, right, that attorneys give. But when the ego is in the way, how do you see that as a barrier to effective business practices?
Right. When you bring your ego into your business, I mean, a healthy ego is what creates a successful entrepreneur, because that way you have trust in yourself and a belief that you can make a difference. So that's important. It's when it crosses the line and it starts to cloud that person's vision and judgment that's when problems occur. And of course, I've worked with businesses that listen to me and they don't take my advice. And I never can.
Me too.
I never can. I never can expect that they will do that. I can only offer it. But my main job and responsibility is to listen carefully and critically to that leader, to that manager, and to collaborate with them so that they are a part of the solution as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's so super important what you said, because when I thought, would give that same advice and say, well, they don't want to take your advice. In fact, I would often have, people sometimes would find me because I do trainings. I've been training teams and organizations, and they would say, oh, I want this training or that training. And I would go back to them and say, do you really want to make a change? Or do you just want to spend this money because it's the end of the fiscal period? Or is this putting a Band-Aid on a bigger problem? Even as a speaker, sometimes, like I was even brought in as a speaker for making change on race riots in the Newark, New Jersey school system. I asked the same question. Do you really want to make a change, or are you just putting a Band-Aid on this because there was a very sad outcome in resulting in a fatality? Well, it's not going to do anything if you bring a speaker in for the day, or you bring me in to train and you don't follow up. And then people at the end of the day say this training is this is a bunch of bullshit. This is not going, and that's what they say. People have, when I'm interviewing them properly, they'll say that, like, you know what, like, oh, or they'll say, I'm not going to say anything. I said, please tell me. I'm here to help, and I'm not going to report back what you're saying. But if you all don't be honest, I don't know what's going on here. And they'll say there's never any follow up. So I would always say to people coming after me, do you really want to make a change? Well, then this has got to be a journey. It's not a 1-day training. It's not a 2-day training. It's not a 1-week training. It's a journey. And the other thing that you mentioned about the unhealthy ego is about working on yourself. And it made me think about, Jean just wrote this really cool blog called A Beginner's Mind. I think that would be a great tip for our listeners, to kind of connect to, if your ego is getting in your way and you see that, that's okay. That's like amazing that you identify that. Like, wait, this is my ego, or this is me being irrational. But I think your article that we have on our website, if you want to check it out, SherryBlairInstitute.com, go to the blog and you'll see Jean's blog. But I was wondering if you could comment, like, Jean, how does a beginner's mind help you and to keep a beginner's mind, no matter how old or how long you're in it? How can that help you? I think that would be a great tip for our listeners.
Yeah, I think that we all get comfortable and we all want to be comfortable with what we're doing, but it's important to keep an open and curious mind. And I think one of the biggest lessons I learned in this life is that I don't have all the answers. And there are other really smart people out there that I can work with and listen to. And having that curiosity and that openness to be able to hear and apply what works for you and your team and your business is critical to success. Because once a person closes themselves off and they get in that comfortable place and they do the same thing over and over, they're also closing off their profitability and their success.
Yeah, amen, sister. Uh, awesome. You made me think of a quote that even, I'm no longer teaching in academics, but even when I'm teaching anyone new anything, and I remember this myself to keep myself with a beginner's mind. And I do one of my signature strengths, which if you want to find out what your signature strengths are too, we can help you with that and then help you grow in them. One of the things that I love about these are one of my favorite signature strengths that I have is a quest for knowledge and wisdom. And I just love learning. And for the most part, I'm not 100% because I'm human. And yes, we do get comfortable, but I'm always like, I know, Jean, you've always said that to me, like, you're always, wanting to know this and that. But the quote that I'm thinking about and that I've shared with when I'm teaching new people to help them understand is Socrates, one of Socrates' quote, which for those of you that don't know Socrates, go back to ancient wisdom, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. They're all known for our beginning, going back to learning some of our beginning wisdom. And Socrates' quote that I love is, I know that I am intelligent because I know that I know nothing. Now, the truth is we all know a lot of things, but the world is vast. Knowledge is vast. Even despite me having graduate degrees, or my last one in industrial organizational psychology, or Jean having a degree as an attorney and prior to that being an educator, that still doesn't mean that I know everything about industrial organizational psychology or Jean knows everything about being a lawyer, right? Like there's still, even within our expertise, there's still so much more to learn. Even in the mental health field, I tell people that too. Like I bring positive psychology and cognitive science and, how to overcome your change, process and your barriers for the change process, etc., and other things that come into it. But then there's other people that take a different focus. Same thing, like think about lawyers, right? You have lawyers for specific industries or specific issues or problems. So when we keep our mind open, that really helps us to kind of get our ego out of the way. And you know what? Maybe, Jean, you could close with, if you've been making a mistake or if you haven't been able to really be insightful, what would you say to somebody now if they're willing to?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I would go back to what the Buddhists say.
Okay.
And say that there are no mistakes. There are only life lessons. And let's take those lessons and create an opportunity to learn and grow from them. Let's keep an open mind. Let's explore alternatives. And let's try to focus on productivity of people and your company.
That's awesome. We ought to make sure we get the transcript from this. I love that, right? So it's like, that's because that's what it's about, that our bottom line is. And I think the thing that I always found powerful is that these principles are for all aspects of your life. And yeah, that there are no mistakes, there are only learning opportunities. One thing I always love to say, and I get excited about, is saying, let's explore the possibilities. It's like, wow, what it could be possible between us. Jean, I want to before we go, Jean, could you tell our listeners what we have cooking up for October in San Diego?
Yes, I became from the East Coast, a West Coast girl, and now I live in San Diego. And Sherry and I have decided to put on a training for business leaders of all businesses and opportunities. So October 20th and 21st.
Yes, that's what we're looking at. More to come.
In San Diego doing a leadership training, several hours each day for those 2 days so that you can also enjoy beautiful San Diego. And we want to give you the opportunity to explore and expand and collaborate and make your business more enjoyable and more profitable for you and your employees. So we hope you'll join us in San Diego, and please look to the SherryBlairInstitute.com for more information.
Yeah, awesome. And one of the things, so Jean had attended, this is when she was still an executive director, my 2-day that I did for leaders in New Mexico in 2019, right before the pandemic. So now we want to come out of the pandemic and be live and in person again together. But we really want to kind of immerse you. We don't want to sit there and lecture to you. We want to give you the jump start to go back. So more like a mastermind opportunity, not just sitting there, lecture and slides. Like, no, we want to kind of like, right, come comfortable and roll up your sleeves. So we're looking forward to that collaboration and a lot more in between. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. Again, if you want to talk with Jean or I, just go to the SherryBlairInstitute.com and you can schedule a free consultation with one of us. So we'd love to hear from you. Jean, thank you so much for joining my podcast today. It was a pleasure to have you on.
And my honor. Thank you, Sherry.
All right. Have a wonderful day, beautiful people.